Hi guys, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to speak to all of you. What I wanted to say today was that joy is not universal in form, but it is in essence. We all have a different opinion of what joy is. When I think of joy, I think of the movie Inside Out and how that crazy yellow girl is sort of ruining everybody's life a little bit, but honestly she kind of just makes everything better. Except joy is also really quiet at the same time. I remember my first time that I truly experienced joy was with my grandma in the kitchen. We were baking my great-grandma's butter cake, and I had just seen this thing on 5 Minute Crafts that you put a little bit of cake batter into a mug, and you put it in the microwave, and it basically gives you a little mug cake to see what the cake is going to be like when it comes out of the oven. Obviously, being a 10-year-old, I was super excited for this. And so I put the little mug in the microwave, but instead of 30 seconds, I put it in there for 5. And the mug and the cake started burning. And I was just in the living room, living my best life. And my grandma was like, so I smell something in the kitchen and it does not smell good. So I went to the kitchen and it's burning and I start sobbing. I felt so bad. It was the worst thing I had ever done at the age of 10. So after about 10 minutes of straight sobbing to my grandma, she made me feel like it wasn't really a big deal and that nothing really was going to come from it and it was okay. And looking back, I'm really, really glad that happened because that led me closer to my grandmother and we had some really sweet conversations that day. I can't remember every single word that was said, but I do remember that it was the first time I felt like myself. And I truly just felt joy in that little moment of being there with her. But everyone experiences joy differently. If I were to ask my brother what his favorite moment of his life where he felt the most joyful was, he would probably say senior night, when he scored, ran the entire length of the field, ripped his shirt off, and got a yellow card. He was the happiest person to ever get a yellow card. Anybody who knows my mom would say it's whenever she's around kids, whenever she gets to pick up a little 2-month-old baby, and she could talk to that longer than she could talk to pretty much any adult. My dad would feel the most joyful when he's listening, creating, or doing anything related to music. I know some of my fellow speakers, Urena, she feels really joyful when she's baking. But babies feel joyful when you play peekaboo with them for 10 seconds. And middle schoolers, the best part of their week was watching a movie in English class. That is until you give them their next chocolate milk. But it's so interesting to see how many different ways joy is shown in different people. One of my favorite things, one of the things that makes me feel the most joyful right now is the holidays. So you could tell my very long last name, I'm Brazilian, and we always go home for the holidays, and Christmas is this huge ordeal. We start on the 24th at my grandma on my mom's side, and we stay there, I think we get there at about 6 p.m., and we stay there till 2, 3 in the morning. And we have dinner, we pray together, and it's the best thing ever. And it's just so sweet to be able to see my family members after a while of not seeing them. And it's just this huge celebration. But that's truly what it is. And then New Year's is even better. Sometimes we go down to the beach, we jump waves, and hearing the joy of the people around you at 12:01 on New Year's Day might be the sweetest thing ever. So it's just truly something that means a lot to me. But I'm someone who's moved a lot. I've lived in 5 different countries. I've moved several times. And I've noticed that everywhere that I move, joy is a little bit different. So I moved out of Brazil, I moved for the first time when I was 1.5, and I moved to the UK. I can't remember much from there, so I can't tell you much about that. But the first place I do remember celebrating holidays is in Malaysia. In Malaysia, one of the biggest celebrations is Chinese New Year. On Chinese New Year, us elementary schoolers, we would spend so much time, I'm talking like a good solid 2 weeks, making like a little dragon head out of a cardboard box, and we would perform in front of our parents, and it was so much fun. We would I remember practicing for weeks our dance and our song, and just standing up there and having the biggest smile on my face. If I look back into my parents' camera rolls from around that time, you will see little Julia with 2 little buns on her head, and this dress, and I have the biggest smile on my face. I was surrounded by my friends. I was doing what I liked, which was singing and dancing, and I was truly so joyful. But that was very different from how it was when I moved to Argentina. In Argentina, there weren't really like one holiday that would stick out to me, but there were things like going to friends' birthday parties a lot, or dinner at a family friend's house. I think I spent more weekends out of the house with someone's family eating dinner or doing something that I spent inside the house. And staying up late, and finding a little corner to sleep in when the party ran long. It just brings so much joy, but that's so different from the joy that I would experience during Chinese New Year when I was singing and dancing in the focus of all the attention. When I moved here, things were a little different. I moved here mid-COVID, October of 2020. That was really weird to me. I'd only been to Florida before, and it was kind of weird to see, honestly, an end time to events. My friends' birthday parties ending at 7 p.m. instead of when everybody decided to go home was a culture shock to me. But I learned to appreciate it. Now I can appreciate going home and sleeping early. Well, staying up on TikTok until late, but going home. And I just think no one person is more joyful than another, except for the way that we experience joy. So my point is, I think if you can learn to look at your neighbor and maybe see how they experience joy a little bit, you'll feel a bit more joy for yourself. Thank you.